Thank you very much. My name is Chris Moore, M-O-O-R-E. I'm the Senior Director for International Business Policy at the National Association of Manufacturers. The NAM is the largest manufacturing association in the United States, representing businesses small and large in every industrial sector and in all 50 states. Manufacturing employs nearly 12 million women and men across the country, accounting for 2/3 of private sector research and development and contributing more than $1.8 trillion to the U.S. economy annually. Innovation drives and supports U.S. jobs and global leadership in manufacturing. According to the Commerce Department, innovative industries directly support more than 27 million jobs across the country, and in 2010 accounted for more than 60% of U.S. merchandise exports. But today, intellectual property rights are under threat around the world, and manufacturers are particularly concerned about the growing use of intellectual property as an industrial policy tool, and that includes acts, policies, and practices that deny adequate and effective protection of intellectual property rights to force local production and local innovation. In India, for example, rules and regulations frequently condition market access on technology transfer and the disclosure of confidential information. To be eligible for certain government benefits, a right holder often must develop intellectual property in China or transfer their rights to a Chinese entity. China's technology licensing rules handicap overseas firms. Technology licensors based abroad assume greater risks and liabilities than domestic licensors. They are liable for their licensees' use of the licensed technology and cannot own improved technology made by licensees. China promotes patented Chinese technologies through its standard-setting process. Overseas manufacturers cannot participate in that process except by invitation. Often they do not have access to the technical committees where standards are decided and therefore cannot join patent pools. Under the terms of a national manufacturing and telecommunications policy released in 2011, India is seeking to force the local production of a wide range of manufactured goods. It is implementing those policies through multiple means, including denying adequate and effective intellectual property protection. For example, India's national manufacturing policy encourages compulsory licensing of green technology that is not manufactured domestically. Its national telecom policy establishes financial incentives for the local development of telecommunications products with an emphasis on products created with Indian intellectual property. To benefit local drug companies, the Indian government has denied or revoked patents for more than a dozen innovative medications over the last 2 years, including a number that were distributed in India free of charge or at substantially reduced cost. In Russia, recently proposed changes to a legislative framework governing the customs union between Russia, Belarus, and Kazakhstan appears to give trademark owners and users the right to block parallel imports of branded products, but only if they have set up or will set up manufacturing of like-branded products in Russia. Manufacturers are very concerned that other countries will take similar actions. A recent study for Brazil's lower house of Congress proposes expanding the use of compulsory licensing to promote local production, raising serious concerns about the future direction of that country's innovation policy. The growing practice of denying adequate and effective protection of intellectual property rights to force local production and local innovation comes against a backdrop of high rates of counterfeiting and piracy and weak intellectual property protection and enforcement. In fiscal year 2012, the U.S. Customs and Border Protection seized more than 22,000 shipments of counterfeit and pirated goods. China accounted for well over half those shipments and for more than 70% of all seizures by value. The continuing threat of counterfeit and pirated goods to consumer health and safety and to jobs and manufacturing in the United States underscores the need for global action to combat illicit trade and for additional measures to detect, detain, inspect, seize, and destroy counterfeit and pirated goods shipped by mail. Copyright piracy is widespread across India. Nearly 2/3 of all software is pirated. And a recent study conducted by the NAM and the Harvard Business School found that global software piracy cost the United States more than 42,000 manufacturing jobs over the last decade. Russia remains a center of online piracy. It is home to two of the world's most prolific criminal release groups for motion pictures, as well as multiple sites that offer access to pirated music. Basic enforcement of online piracy has lagged far behind the rapid growth of internet and wireless access in Russia. For these reasons and others outlined in our written submission, the NAM urges the Special 301 Committee to retain China on the priority watch list with Section 306 monitoring, to designate India as a priority foreign country, and to retain Russia on the priority watch list. The acts, policies, and practices of all three countries are onerous and egregious. They are having or could have a great impact on manufacturing in the United States, particularly given the size of these markets. According to the World Bank, China is the world's second largest economy on a purchasing power parity basis. India is third, Russia is sixth. What distinguishes them is the direction of progress and the presence and credibility of ongoing engagement. In China and Russia, we see engagement and progress, however limited. The 24th U.S.-China Joint Commission on Commerce and Trade saw movement on trade secrets, data protection, counterfeiting, and trademark regulations. Russia recently joined the World Trade Organization and established a bilateral action plan on intellectual property rights protection with the United States. It is making progress in reducing software piracy rates. To be clear, these steps are far from what is needed, but they are steps in the right direction. By contrast, India appears to be shifting into reverse. Despite high-level interventions by President Obama, Vice President Biden, Secretary of State Kerry, USTR Froman, and others, India's intellectual property environment is deteriorating. It is not engaging in negotiations or making progress in bilateral or multilateral negotiations. The U.S.-India Trade Policy Forum, established in 2005, has a mandate to address intellectual property protection and enforcement, but it has not met since 2010. No other potentially relevant dialogue has met since 2011. In multilateral forums, India is leading efforts to weaken intellectual property protections. India is an important market for manufacturers. We can certainly see the promise in a range of sectors, including in defense and aerospace, but a successful partnership depends on regular engagement and a two-way street. And the woeful absence of dialogue makes clear the Indian government lacks any serious commitment to engage. India is the only country in the world that has been on the priority watch list or higher since the first Special 301 report was issued in 1989. Placing India on the priority watch list for another year is unlikely to result in meaningful progress, and we urge this committee to consider elevation to priority watch list. Thank you very much. Look forward to addressing any questions you have.
Thank you very much for your testimony. I'll ask you a question I asked one of the earlier speakers. I mean, clearly one of the things that you identified with respect to India as a differentiating factor is the lack of engagement. Obviously, governments engage when they perceive some leverage in other governments, and so we're doing what we can. As you mentioned, we've engaged the Indians at a variety of high levels. The obvious investment question: how is India's behavior affecting investment by NAM member companies in that country? Because it seems to me that that is a critical leverage point.
Yeah, I think our member companies have been very concerned by what they see as a troubling pattern of behavior by the Indian government, its industrial policies, forced localization policies, concerns about the protection of intellectual property rights. And a lot of these things have arisen over the last couple of years and become a serious concern. They've always had challenges working in the Indian market, but I think very concerned about the direction in which the environment for business is headed. Certainly, there have been declines overall in foreign direct investment in the Indian market. The India's Department of Industrial Policy and Promotion shows that foreign direct investment in India fell by more than 36% between financial year 2011-2012 to financial year 2012-2013. In the telecommunications sector, there's certainly been a steep drop-off in investment between 2011 and 2012 from $2 billion to just $300 million. We've certainly heard anecdotal stories from members who are either reconsidering investments that they were considering in the Indian market or holding off on things that they were doing. Always hard to link these types of figures to exact policies, and I'm not attempting to do that now, but I think we see some worrying signs in terms of the investment climate there, and I think you're starting to see some movement in the direction of the market.
Thank you for that. I think numbers would be very helpful to us. In a lot of these discussions, we talk in terms of anecdotes and we talk in terms of perceived cause and effect, and I realize that associations tend to be in a difficult situation because you're not the actual company that's making the investment, but to the extent that you can help us actually identify some of these figures, that would be hugely helpful.
We're happy to provide the information we have.
That would be great, and I would ask that you do that through the regulations.gov site. I think we're at 10 minutes. So again, I apologize to my colleagues for preempting your questions, but we would like to follow up with some of these questions in writing. We do have several on China, I think, that we would like NAM's insights on. So thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
And I'd like to call the next